part of the history of Kanchipuram is the Buddhist and Jaina part, where very little practically remains. You can find an odd statue here or there, that's about it. It really begins with the Pallava period. Pallavas actually came from Andhra. They were probably of Telugu origin, and they came here. And why did they come to a place like Kanchipuram, which is very much in the interior, is something we should think about. So what was there in Kanchipuram? Now before the Pallavas, there may have been a few temples and so on, but we know that Kanchipuram was also a very big center of Jainism and Buddhism. And we have references to by Hyun Sung, who says that Ashoka built a stupa in Kanchipuram, and that there was a great Ghatika. Now he has come all the way from China to visit this Ghatika. Ghatika means university. So he comes all the way from China to visit this university at Kanchipuram. So you can imagine what a great university it must have been. And we also know that the princes of the Kalabras and so on, the princes from, that is the Konkan region, Goa, they came to Kanchipuram to study. So all the Deccani princes were sent to Kanchipuram for their education. So that is something very important. So it was a city of education, and it was a city of weaving, because a city can't survive, at least in those days, it could not survive on education alone. So there had to be a trade, and that trade was weaving.
It is hard to imagine that this temple town was once a great Buddhist and even Jain city. Legend has it that Buddha even visited Kanchipuram, and the Mauryan emperor Ashoka erected a commemorative stupa on the spot where the Buddha had rested. While there is no historic proof of this, Hyun Sung, the celebrated Chinese traveller who visited Kanchipuram in 640 CE, refers to the stupa here. The transformation of the centre of education or Ghatika to a centre of the arts happened as Kanchipuram became an important political capital under the Pallavas. Through history, the south, the area of present-day Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu were well known as centres of cotton and weaving. The Greek text, the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, mentions how Greek traders came to Urayur, the early Chola capital in present-day Tiruchirappalli, to buy cottons. In the account, the author mentions how this region was famous for cotton that was so fine that it could be compared to a cloud of steam. Cotton and weaving played an important role in Tamil history.
Well, when you say Kanjivaram sari, you're talking about the silk sari. But the silk is very new. Much older is the cotton sari. In fact, it's very interesting to note that all the capitals of the ancient dynasties of Tamil Nadu were in major cotton weaving centers. Kanchipuram, that's where the Pallavas had their capital. The Cholas, they had it in Orayur, in Tanjore. The Pandyas in Madurai, the Cheras in Kongunadu, near modern Coimbatore, and so on. So, cotton weaving was very famous over here, and all the trade to the east coast was for cotton. Just as they came to the west coast for spices, they came to the east coast for cotton fabric.
Inland though it is, Kanchipuram emerged as an important centre of weaving and trade as ships came through the river upstream from the port city of Mamalapuram or Mahabalipuram, which is still part of the Kanchipuram district. It was under the Pallavas that Kanchipuram saw a great flowering. From the 6th century CE to the 9th century CE, Kanchipuram was a rich and powerful capital and centre of art. But like India's other great weaving centres, Kanchipuram too was a centre of cotton weaving. After the Pallavas, the weavers of Kanchipuram enjoyed the patronage of the Cholas, who were centred further south. It is believed that Rajaraja Chola The first invited a large number of weavers from Saurashtra and Gujarat to settle down in the area and establish looms in the 11th century CE. The next wave of migrant weavers came during the time of the Vijayanagar dynasty in the 16th century. During this time, the weaving communities of Andhra Pradesh, Devangas and the Saligars migrated south and settled in different parts of the empire, including Coimbatore and Kanchipuram. New influences added new layers to the Kanchivaram.
There is also a tradition that silk weavers came from Banaras at the time when Banaras was attacked by the Muslims. You see, all the weavers who came down south were at various stages people who moved away when their place was attacked by the Muslim invasion. Like the Saurashtras, when the Muslims came to Saurashtra, they came to the south. Similarly in Banaras, when Banaras was attacked by Aurangzeb, lot of weavers moved south. So that is how a lot of the tradition, the Banarasi tradition also influenced the Kanchi tradition.
What we see of the Kanchivaram today is a product of many threads of influence. However, despite all this, the Kanchivaram sari has managed to maintain its own. Its deep connect with the temple town it comes from. This makes the Kanchivaram unique in many ways.
What is unique is the fact that the body and the border are woven separately and joined together in what is called corvée. You will see it when you go and see the weaving. And these designs, whether it's the corvée or the border design, are all taken from temples. You know, the designs that you have Rudraksha, then you have Hamsam. You know, you have different designs which you see on the temple pillars and so on. You will find it in these Kanchipuram saris.
The Kanchipuram silks, part of every bride's trousseau, especially in South India, are so iconic that it is difficult to imagine Kanchipuram, the home of these saris, was known more for its cottons than silks. In fact, the Tamil word for silk, seenam, indicates where it came from first, China. It was only later that Mysore began producing silk for the looms here. Sadly, like elsewhere in the country, cotton weaving is a fast disappearing art. Till a few years back, the village of Vadamanapakam in the Tiruvannamalai district was a major center for weavers who made the finest cottons. Today, there are just 5 families that follow this age-old tradition. In the home of Kumaravel, one of the few weavers still weaving cotton saris, we are transformed into another era as he and his wife go through the process of preparing the cotton yarn and weaving a kanchi cotton. The weaving of a sari takes time and effort, especially if it is cotton. The yarn is thick and easily breakable on the loom, and often the laborious work is just not worth it. Silk saris are easier to make and more lucrative to do. Kumaravel tells us that he has been following the tradition of weaving kanchi cottons like his father and forefathers did for the last 40 years. But his children have not touched a loom.
அதாங்க ஒரு மகள் ஒரு மகன், பையன் வந்து பெரியவன் 25 வயசு ஆகுது, மகளுக்கு 23 வயசு, கல்யாணம் பண்ணிட்டோம், மாமியார்ட்டுக்கு இது குழந்தை. பையன் வந்து கம்பெனியில் வேலை செய்கிறான், ப்ரைவேட் கம்பெனியில் தான் டிப்ளமா முடிச்சுக்கிறான் மெக்கானிக்கல்.
So none of them do weaving? They don't do weaving?
அதெல்லாம் தெரியாதுங்க மேடம், ஒரு கட்ட கூட தெரியாது, ஒன்றுமே தெரியாது பசங்களுக்கு, ஒன்றும் இல்லைங்க, வருத்தம் எதுவும் இல்லைங்க. அவங்க ஏதோ போய் சம்பாதிக்கிறாங்க மாதம், இது வேலை செஞ்சால் தான் பாவம் நிச்சயம் தான் கூலியே. அது வந்து கம்பெனியில் மாதம் படிச்சுட்டு போயிட்டாங்க, ஏதோ ஒன்று பண்ணுறாங்க, 5000 வாங்குறாங்க, அதனால் அவங்க செய்யலையான்னு வருத்தம் இல்லைங்க.
A fine sari with high cotton count, a mark of its quality, can cost anywhere between 3,000 to 6,000 rupees, and there are few takers for it. Ironically, the tradition of handing out free saris to the poor as part of SOPs by successive Tamil Nadu governments has given a new lease of life to the simple cottons from the region. At the local cooperative weaving center, the manager tells us how this has helped.
இப்போதைக்கு பட்டு சேலை தயார் பண்ணல, ஒரு 10 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னாடி தயார் பண்ணோம். ஒரு 10 வருஷம் பட்டு கொடுத்துருந்தோம். பட்டு கிராமத்தில் இருக்கிறதுனால வீவிங் பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் நல்லா டெவலப் ஆச்சுங்க. பட்டு அதாவது சேல்ஸ் பர்பஸு முடியல. குவார்ட்டர்ஸில் ஒன்லி 50% தான் சேலை பர்ச்சேஸ் பண்ணாங்க. மீதி 50% நம்மளால் விற்க முடியல. அதனால் கொஞ்சம் குறைச்சலான லாபம் வந்து இப்போ பட்டு எடுத்துட்ட பிறகு கவர்மெண்ட்டு ஃப்ரீ ஸ்கீம் மட்டும்தான் தயார் பண்ணுறோம். கூட கொஞ்சம் 60s அதாவது 60 ரகம் தயார் பண்ணி இருக்கிறதுனால இப்போ கொஞ்சம் நல்லா சங்கம் நல்ல நிலையிலே இருக்குது.
The demand for thousands of cheap cotton saris has provided employment to the weavers who would otherwise have moved on. At the large weaving center, the cooperative brands, you can see them hard at work. But even in this village, a half-hour drive from the city of Kanchipuram, it is easy to see which way the needle is turning. The affluence in the area of silk weavers is in stark contrast to the poverty elsewhere. Lakshmanan was a weaver who moved up, setting up his own business. He today employs weavers and his factory produces around 250 to 300 heavy zari saris each month. The kanjivaram is so much in demand that most of the houses along this lane have turned into busy workshops producing kanjivaram silks. In Kanchipuram itself, shops like these act as wholesalers, supplying to the largest retailers across India. Balaji, the proprietor of one such shop, tells us how business is so brisk.
மந்த்லி 300 sarees 300 sarees நமக்கு கைக்கு கிடைக்கும்போது நம்ம கொடுக்குறது இந்தியா ஃபுல்லாக கொடுக்குறோம். வெளிநாடு கிடையாது, இந்தியா ஃபுல்லாக எல்லா கடைக்காரனும் வருவாங்க. நாங்கள் தயார் பண்ணுற ஸ்ட்ரீட்டில் எங்களை மாதிரி கடை 150 ஷாப் இருக்குது. எல்லா கடைக்கும் அவங்களுக்கு என்ன பேட்டர்ன் போகுமோ அந்த பேட்டர்னை வந்து பர்ச்சேஸ் பண்ணுவாங்க. என்னுடைய நாலேஜுக்கு என்ன தெரியுதோ அதை நான் தயார் பண்ணுறேன். இதை மாதிரி மற்றவங்க தயார் பண்ணுறது மொத்தமாக சேர்த்து அவங்க ப்ராடாக காட்டுறாங்க, நாங்கள் சிம்பிளாக காட்டுறோம். இந்தியா ஃபுல்லாகவே சப்ளை பண்ணுறோம். இங்கே அதுன்னு கிடையாது, எனக்கு யார் பேமெண்ட்டு கரெக்டாக கொடுக்குறாங்களோ அவங்களுக்கு சப்ளை பண்ணுறோம், ரெகுலராக பண்ணுறோம். அதே மாதிரி காஞ்சிபுரத்தில் ரீட்டைல் ஷாப்புக்கும் நாங்கள் சப்ளை பண்ணிகிட்டு இருக்கோம்.
The classic Kanjivaram sari is inextricably linked with the city it comes from. But there is little of the history evident through the weaves of the sari that can be seen outside the loom. To understand the history of the city and its textile tradition, you have to head to this museum run by the family of Nandita Krishna. This 400-year-old house is where the family of C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer, eminent lawyer and the old Diwan of the Travancore state, lived. Here you will see a snapshot of everyday life and the different influences that have made Kanchipuram, its Buddhist past and its temples. In the backyard of the small museum, you can even see the Kanchi tree from which the city got its name. This is perhaps one of the few trees that still stand. Upstairs, you can see some of the oldest Kanjivaram saris that are still intact. Sporting classic designs and motifs, these are rare antiques given that very few silk saris survive through time. It is sad that like elsewhere across India, change is wiping out a lot of Kanchipuram's past, be it in the loom or in the weaver's house. Dr. Krishna believes that a concerted effort is needed to revive and restore what we are losing.
Because the silk sari is so popular, people come all the way to Chennai and to Kanchipuram just to buy it, and it also gets exported all over the country and all over the world too. The cottons are the ones that are dying out, and that is a tragedy because this state was known for its cotton. Not just the state, the whole east coast, Andhra, Tamil Nadu. It was known for its cotton trade, it was known for its cotton weaving, and each place had something unique. It's not that it was, the same thing from top to bottom. Each one had a different texture, different count, different design. Even the warp and weft were different. Like Orissa is not so far. In Orissa you have ikat, but here you have something else. So all that is there. That should be preserved. That is what is getting lost without sufficient buyers. And the other big problem is, of course, the power loom. What a power loom can weave, a hand loom cannot compete with it.
If the cotton looms have to be restored, the job of weaving will have to be made more lucrative. Today, very few youngsters want to make a living through this. The rapid industrialization of the region has also meant far better opportunities elsewhere.
Firstly, everyone wants their son to do BSc Computer Science and go into the IT industry. I don't know how many of them do weaving anymore. I myself have a young man who comes from a very, very ancient, traditional weaving family. He did his botany and he's a scientist. Everything, he does everything except weaving. Though he claims that he still knows weaving, but I've known him for about 30 years and 30 years he hasn't woven a hanky. So I don't think he can weave. That is what's happening. They're all going away from their traditional skills, their tradition of weaving, to modern, they all want office jobs. That's the thing. Because even farming is having that problem in this region, because farmers have to work under the sun. It's a very hot, unpleasantly hot, humid area. So nobody wants to work, as they say, in the sun when they can work in an air-conditioned office. And now we have all these factories coming up between Chennai and Bangalore, and Kanchipuram is 70 kilometers from Chennai on the Bangalore highway. So, people come, the factories send air-conditioned buses to pick up these young men and women, take them to their factories, and they work there the whole day, drop them back in air-conditioned buses. So with all that air-conditioned luxury, why would they want to work in a loom without air conditioning, I suppose, the whole day?
It is amazing that the Kashi of the South, Kanchipuram, one of the holiest places in the country, faces the same challenges as the eternal city of Banaras. The challenge is reviving what is lost and ensuring that the traditions followed for millennia are carried on.